bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. Ready? This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go!
And good morning, Birds fans. Appreciate you streaming in with us here on Birds 365. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We'll be hanging with you for the next 2 hours talking birds, and more birds. So stay tuned to us. J-Mac, let me take a peek here. Not that you can necessarily tell. It all comes down to the lighting or where you're at. You're looking a little less peaked than you were yesterday.
I don't know.
Wishful thinking on my part? Is that what you're telling me?
Really, it's just a cough, persistent cough. I can't get rid of it, and it's annoying because you're talking, and I partially talk for a living, and then halfway through you start having a coughing fit. It doesn't, it's not optimal. Let's say that.
Understood, and we appreciate your cutting it out and getting it done for the 2 hours of Birds 365. And yesterday, while you were retaining your cough and sucking it up and getting it done, you did spot the fact that Tom Pelissero was reporting that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson had suffered a lacerated kidney, the magnitude of which we don't have all the details yet. You didn't get them down there yesterday. We had a chance to talk to the coaching staff because they weren't going to give them to you anyway. But a lacerated kidney is what it is. And you hearken back to Zach Ertz playing with one during his time with the Philadelphia Eagles. Usually a solid couple weeks, 2, 3, 4, depending on the magnitude of the laceration that he got to his kidney. Eagles are going to be right out there starting safety for a while, are they not?
Yeah, just a matter of how long. I think, they're debating whether to put him on injured reserve. So obviously it's the 4-game sort of demarcation line. If he goes on IR, he's got to miss 4 games. Then you start looking at, obviously, the end of the regular season. We got 6 to go. The thought is he's going to be back sometime in the regular season. If I were the Eagles, I'd be cautious. I'd probably just put him on injured reserve. Zach is probably a bad example because Zach shouldn't have played. Zach played after about a week. Not after about a week, after 1 week. In a lot of ways, that was the start of the disconnect with the organization because he felt he was a little disrespected for what he did for the organization. And he probably was, to be honest, because that is a difficult injury. He was in a lot of pain, and he played through it. I wouldn't count on that. Andrew Luck. There's a lot of examples. Andrew Luck, they shut him down when he lacerated his kidney. Keenan Allen, very familiar to Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen, got shut down with a lacerated kidney. So there are varying degrees of the injury, number one. So the Eagles are still gathering information, but they do expect him back at some point. So that's the good news. Similar to what we talked about with Dallas Goedert and Avonte Maddox and what they're going through right now with those players. Can you persevere without them? It's a little bit more difficult at that position. Is it worse than tight end? I don't know. Everybody's talking about Malcolm Jenkins. I don't see that. I think it's wait and see mode with Reed Blankenship. And there's a lot of uncertainty there, Jody, because, he played really well and thrown into the fire for the first time. That's the first time really he's ever played. He had 2-3 snaps. I forget the exact number. And he kind of won the job behind the scenes, the dime job from Kayvon Wallace. I don't know if he won it or Kayvon lost it because Kayvon, every time he got an opportunity, performed pretty poorly. So that kind of happened behind the scenes. But the Eagles are in dimes so infrequently, you don't get to see it very much. And all of a sudden, he goes from not playing at all to playing all these reps, and he first undrafted rookie ever to intercept Aaron Rodgers. And that was a smart, savvy football play. That wasn't just he threw him the football. He read what was going on and came from the backside. Rodgers didn't see him. It was a really, really nice play. And you could see his football IQ. And then you saw some of the bad. And, there's not many people in this league. I wouldn't get too upset that he couldn't chase down Christian Watson. That wasn't the problem. The problem was the angle that he put himself in, and then it's just over. You gotta make sure, especially when you're playing players like that. But I talked to him after the game, and he noted he hadn't played in a while, so that's part of it as well. You just got to get used to it. And then I go back to his time at Middle Tennessee State. He was a 5-year starter. This is what the Eagles kept saying. He was a 5-year starter. He just played a lot of football. And I know it's Middle Tennessee State, and I know it's not Alabama, but boy, sometimes those guys who just play a lot and play a lot and play, they just know how to play. And they just have a better feel for how to play. I'm not saying he's going to be great. I'm not saying he's going to be terrible. There's a lot of uncertainty, but he's going to be out there for a few weeks, bare minimum.
Right. But I'm not going to cut him a ton of slack on the Christian Watson play. If you're going to, on one hand, give him credit, hey, this guy played 5 years as a starter on the collegiate level, and that led to him being able to almost ball fake Aaron Rodgers into throwing that interception. Then you can't, on the other hand, go, yeah, but he hadn't played much. So you can understand him leaving a bad angle for himself to make that. Well, no. Either he is a guy who's up to speed or he's not a guy who's up to speed. It's one or the other. If you're going to give him credit for the phenomenal play made, well, then he's got to take the grief for the bad play made. Just overall, yeah, the Eagles are going. There's going to be a drop-off. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson led the NFL in interception. So you're going to a guy who's a rookie, undrafted, free agent. There's a drop-off. We'll find out how drastic that drop-off is. But as you noted, overall, we all paid close attention to the two big plays, the one interception and the one chunk play touchdown that he was a big part of both, one good, one bad. The rest of the time, he graded out pretty damn well. So that's a good sign.
Best defensive player on the Eagles, according to PFF, in the game, which is pretty amazing. So he did, overall, he played pretty well.
Exactly.
The only reason I bring up the Watson play and I give him a little bit of, I get it. Believe me, he got marked down for that play. It's just tough to replicate that speed when you're not playing. And, as you're on the field with more guys like that, you get more used to it, and hopefully it gets a little bit better. But if he keeps taking angles like that, think about Tyreek Hill as a more example, because he plays all and everybody knows what a superstar he is. You take a wrong angle on Tyreek Hill, you're done. You're cooked. And you have to understand who you're playing against. Well, that comes with experience, that comes with reps, and that comes with understanding your opponent. So yeah, all rookies, not just him. That's always a difficult circumstance. And then that's where, you know, playing at Middle Tennessee State also certainly hinders you, because you're not going to see a ton of that level of talent at Middle Tennessee State. So
Yeah, but like I said, at Middle Tennessee State, you're not going to see Aaron Rodgers either. And
no,
yeah, he did dupe Aaron Rodgers into the pick that he threw. So he is what he is. And what he is right now is the Eagles starting safety. But if they're going to put Chauncey Gardner-Johnson on the IR, which we don't know yet, they might even wait till after this week's game to get a little bit further into his rehab and be able to diagnose where he's at. So I don't know that it's immediate, unless they know guaranteed we're looking at 4 or 5 or 6 weeks. Then chances are they're going to act pretty quickly, because they have a roster spot to fill. Even if it's not a guy who's going to step in and play, somebody's got to now back up Reed Blankenship. So names are being kicked around. You threw one out. You and I were texting yesterday to try and get another guest. And Scott Grayson of Fox 29 is going to jump on with us in hour number 2. I suggested, hey, we haven't had John Clark on a while. And sure enough, I put on NBC 10, and here's John Clark talking to Malcolm Jenkins at his charity affair here in town last night. And, of course, the question came up, hey, the Eagles now have a need at safety, Malcolm. You look like you're in great shape there, buddy. What do you think? And Malcolm rightfully downplayed it and said, listen, I'm not even a free agent. There are hoops that would have to be jumped through to make something like that happen, let alone the fact that Malcolm hasn't played football. But then again, Linval Joseph and Dominic Sue hadn't played football, and they stepped right in and play. And Malcolm is one of the more beloved players here last decade or so, part of the championship team. Give me a percentage chance that something along the lines of Malcolm Jenkins rejoining the Eagles in the next 4 or 5 days.
Less than 10%. I would put it at, and the only reason I put it that highly is because you never say never with Howie. I've been burned too many times to not leave the door open a little bit. But the most important part you bring up, he's not even a free agent. He was placed on the reserve retired list by the Saints. So they still,
and by the way, the Saints would let Malcolm
the Saints
play.
Are not going to help the Eagles. Yeah.
Oh, they would if the Eagles gave him their first round
pick
back.
Yeah, you want to do that? They're not gonna be getting in line to help the Eagles again.
Understood.
So that's a part of it as well. Linval and Dominic Sue, they were free agents. They could do whatever the heck they wanted. So that's the most obvious difference. You know, I saw Malcolm at practice 2 weeks ago. He was visiting. He's also he's lost some weight. You know, from his playing days. He was a big physical safety at the end. So he played at about 200, right at about 200, a little over 200. Guessing he's probably 185, 190. So he's not in his typical Malcolm Jenkins shape. Now we said, he's Malcolm Jenkins. He's always in good shape, but you could tell. What I'm trying to say is, you could tell he had kind of turned the page and moved on and wasn't thinking about playing football. Now, things change pretty quickly in the NFL, and they change quickly here, because I think the key would be, is Chauncey done for the season? And I don't think he's done for the season. If he's done for the season, then you got to get a safety, and you got to get a safety that can play. I remember talking to an Eagles personnel guy at the trade deadline, and because we were all saying, did they need a third safety? Because nobody believed in Kayvon Wallace, never mind Reed Blankenship. And, the thing they said was, well, number one, we're good with our starting safeties. So they're very happy with Marcus and Chauncey, obviously CJ. And his thought process at the time was like, if you can't help us on special teams, It's not, we don't play that third safety enough where it's going to be relevant. So to me, it would have to be as a starter. It would have to be as a starter. And the only way he would be brought in to be a starter is if one of them was done for the season. And that means Chauncey's done for the season, which I don't think is the case. So I don't think he's going to come in as a backup safety to play special teams at 35, although Malcolm has been willing to do it. And remember, that's a big concern for the Eagles, special teams. So you got to be good at it. I don't see the fit. I don't think, and the one curveball could be if the doctors come back and say, this is really bad. It's probably going to be an Andrew Luck type situation. You're probably going to have to shut him down for the season. Then I think that opens everything. You got to go find a safety and a starting level safety, or as good as you can replicate a starting level safety at this point of the calendar. But I don't think that's where the Eagles are, and they think Chauncey's going to be back.
Understood where you're at, but they still need a body, whether it's starting level, backup level, contributing on special teams. Take the job of the person you're going to sign in whatever direction you want, tied to when you think Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's going to come back. They still need a guy, a safety, for whatever role they think he's going to play. They did cut a couple of veteran safeties late in training camp this year, one of which was their starting safety last year, another of which was our buddy Jaquaski Tart, who we're
going to get the Jaquaski.
Not on the stream yet. I'm surprised we need Jaquaski Tart's return here to Philadelphia, even though he's had 9 weeks to land a job and he hasn't got one, but neither has Anthony Harris. Are either those two guys who were cut late in the preseason before the year started on the Eagles' radar right now? Again, factoring in however much you think that Gardner-Johnson's going to be out, do you think either of those two guys intrigue? Will they reach out? Will they make contact with either of those two former Eagles safeties?
Well, Anthony is on the Broncos, so
he is. Oh, okay.
No,
I thought he was on. I thought he was on the street.
No, he signed on their practice squad pretty early, September-ish, and then he got promoted to the active roster.
My bad.
A few weeks ago. He has a long history with George Patton out there, so those two are very close. So he's not available. With Jaquaski Tart now, the Eagles would have no interest in that. It just wasn't a fit. I'll just leave it at that. From the standpoint, they did. Excuse me, first cough of the day. They did bring in Marquise Blair a couple of weeks ago. If people missed it on the practice squad. You might recognize him because he's a former second-round pick. He's had a lot of injury issues, but there's some talent there. So who knows? It might be as simple as that. You just elevate Marquise Blair, and then you start looking around practice squads and, is there anybody you can get? And I think our buddy Jimmy Kempsey is going to be on later in the week. Did a good job over at Philly Boys, looking at the guys that they've had a history with and guys they're comfortable with. And he brought up Elijah Riley. People remember him. He's with Pittsburgh now. Jared Maiden is with your Jets. Was with the Eagles for a while. Another Alabama guy. Remember the Ugo Amadi era? He was here for about 7 days, if that, less than 7 days. He is in Kansas City, I believe. So those are some of the guys that maybe.
Now, are these guys on the practice squad? Because you just informed me, and shame on me, I should have known. Anthony Harris is on the actual Bronco roster. Are these other safeties on people's practice squad? That if the Eagles wanted to, and I think, as you pointed out, kind of depending on the designation of how they're going to handle Gardner Johnson. If he goes to IR, then you have a roster flexibility spot to deal with. Are these guys you're suggesting they could sign and put immediately on the roster?
Yeah, they're all practice squad guys right now. So the Eagles could offer them a roster spot, sign them off somebody else's practice squad. And basically what that does is it guarantees you 3 weeks. You have to keep the guy on the roster for 3 weeks. So could work if they got to place CJ on injured reserve. You got the 4-week window anyway. If it doesn't work out, you could just move on. But the Eagles do have that sort of history of going back to people they have a history with. So I think, looking at guys that were here before and they're comfortable with is probably, it makes sense, just kind of the way they do business.
But let me ask you to speculate a little on this, because you're right. We're judging Eagles in 2 veins. Number one is the Howie Roseman era and the way they've done business while Howie's been in charge. But I think just as importantly is the Nick Sirianni era. And the fact that a guy was an Eagle before Nick Sirianni got here, came and went, I think lessens the desire to sign a guy like that, because you would think that you'd want the coaching staff to have a good feel for a guy's capability, not just, well, Howie said, we had him here in 2019. So what? And Nick Sirianni doesn't know him. Jonathan Gann doesn't know him. Shane Steichen doesn't know him. I think that would lessen the possibility of, hey, he used to be an Eagle. We know him. If we as the coach, not the coaching staff, how really important is it?
The Eagles pretty much keep those things. Howie's in charge of personnel. How should I say? So,
You think he'd, without an agreement with the coaching staff, he'd just say, hey, listen, I'm getting this guy. I
think it's more of the coaching staff trust him, and rightfully so, because of the roster he's built. And they're not going to, remember, we're not talking about a star player. Maybe it's somebody, if you're bringing in a star player in the offseason, there's probably more conversations that go back and forth. We need a safety. This is what we like, coverage safety. Can he mirror? The Eagles don't really have free and strong safeties. Can he go back and forth? These are the traits we want. Go get us the best guy available. That's pretty much how it's happened. But Howie's in charge of personnel. And the coaching staff rightfully has a lot of confidence in him, and they should have a lot of confidence in him right now.
Johnny Mac and Jody Mac, your Mac and Mac Birds 365 guys. We had Mike Gill here at one point in the green room, but then he dropped off. He was outside.
I was getting too wordy, Jody.
Do you think he went back inside to get another cup of coffee? He was ready to broadcast from outside. More power to him. We got Mike Gill from the Sports Bash down the shore up here, usual Wednesday contributor to the show. Like I said, a little later, Scott Grayson from Fox 29 is going to hop on. We are just getting underway on a midweek Wednesday edition of Birds 365.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Jim Gardner is an icon.
A Philadelphia treasure.
He's a mentor, a pace setter.
Jim is my North Star.
He's trusted, revered,
appreciated.
He is Action News.
He's compassionate, honest,
and fair.
He is extremely dedicated,
motivated, and always seeking the truth.
He's also funny. We are a team of many.
Jim Gardner is our leader,
and we're lucky to have him.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Johnny Mac, Cody Mac, here with John Birds 365. We had our third party. You're recognizing the face these days because he's good enough to join us every Wednesday here on Birds 365. And I swore I thought I saw him outside. Did you double back and go, yeah, no, this was a bad idea. Let me go inside. It's getting a little bit cold. Or did I just make that up? He doesn't have the inside signal.
Oh, no, man. I thought maybe my Christmas tree looked like I was outside, but
there we go. Yeah,
I'm inside.
I'm impressed that you got all the Christmas decorations up, Mike. I have not started, to say the least. We lost.
Don't give me any points. My girlfriend, she was all over it.
All right, there we go. That's usually the way it happens.
My wife suggested I do it Sunday. I'm going, hello, National Football League. No, we won't be bringing a tree up from the basement today.
Well,
talk to me Tuesday or Wednesday.
The fact that the Eagles played a night game was the reason. It was like, all right, the Eagles are on at night. We're going to take over. No, the TV is right here. So the TV's on while the tree's going up, and I'm just kind of observing and watching. So, yeah, it was a little early this year because last year we went so late that she was very focused on making sure that we got that tree up early this year. We only got like 2 weeks of tree last year.
I like it. Very focused, much like the Eagles. 10-1 level of focus to get it up that early. I know you got a chance, Mike, to talk to Malcolm Jenkins. Malcolm was doing the rounds yesterday because he had a function yesterday in town. It's ironic. I saw him a couple weeks ago at practice before the C.J. Gardner-Johnson injury, obviously, and all of a sudden it pops up, and here's Malcolm in town. Just happens to be in front of the cameras recently. So, Philadelphia fans. Well, let's call Malcolm. Now, I'm sure you asked Malcolm, does he want to play? Does he want to come back to a 10-1 team? Does he want to ring shot for another ring? And could he? He's still the property of the New Orleans Saints, which is complicating matters a little bit.
So I asked him in 3 different ways, right? Just flat out asked him, hey, do you have any interest in playing? And he said, I said, hey, listen, you're in town tonight. And now C.J. Gardner-Johnson was supposed to be at the event with him.
Yeah.
I don't know that he ended up showing up or not, but it was billed that he would be at the event. So I said, hey, he's supposed to be there. What if Howie showed up and said, hey, he's not going to play. Would you like to play? And he said, well, I would listen, but this is, and he went into this, long diatribe about how he's happy watching games. And then I asked him about, now that you're watching games, now you can see how fans can be so irrational. And he kind of laughed at that. So then I asked him, well, you used to play for the Saints and they're in the division mix. What if they wanted you to play? And he said, well, I live in Philly and in New Orleans. I watch both teams, and I'm enjoying watching both of the teams. But, Yeah, I mean, I can't, say no if. And then I asked him essentially, watching Sue and Joseph return at 35 years old, does that make you think like, hey, I only have to do this for a month? And that one, he kind of said, watching those guys hasn't made me want to do this. Like getting into these collisions, I'm perfectly fine where I'm sitting. So it was kind of like three different angles of him saying, I'd listen, but I'm content with what I'm doing. I didn't get the sense, now maybe in some of the other conversations he had, that he was more forthcoming. I didn't get the sense that he was just ready to jump back out on the field if the Eagles made a call, that he's just sitting there waiting for the phone to ring.
No, I saw him on John Clark on NBC 10 last night, and he laid it out. Listen, I'm not even a free agent, so there's going to be hoops and they're going to have to be jumped through. He didn't dismiss it. But as you kind of
he left a crack. I would say he left a crack.
It's the Howie crack. That's why you never know if Howie's going to show up. It's
interesting, John, and you said you have Grayson coming on at next hour. Yeah. Grayson and I, because Grayson works with us as well, and we were at Radio Row at the Super Bowl in Miami, and we had Malcolm on, and he was set to become a free agent that offseason.
Yeah.
And he had said to us, look, this is a business, man, and this is their move. I want to be back. This is up to them. So you don't know how the relationship was left between him and Howie. Obviously, they didn't sign him, but he did say he wanted to come back here and that it was on them that he was not back here. So it might not be this friendly pick up the phone, hey, man, how are things? Now, 2 years have blown over. Malcolm's still a great individual in the community. I don't think he held any grudges, but at that time, you don't know how it was left.
No, it wasn't great at that time. But the Eagles were in a different spot. I think Malcolm probably took a step back, realized, look, that's a difficult job to be a GM in this league.
Yes.
You got to make difficult decisions, and one of the most difficult, arguably the most difficult, is to move on from a great player. Malcolm was a great player, wanted to continue to play, but he was a descending player. The Eagles weren't ready to win at the time. He does love the city. Malcolm loves the city. He always said he was coming back. He was going to live here. And he toggles back and forth between here and New Orleans. But I do think there was a strained relationship at the time. But I do think Malcolm's gotten over it. Yeah. As I said, he was at practice. He just shows up when he wants to. So that sort of that if there was a disconnect, it's been repaired from that perspective. So I don't think that would be the biggest hurdle. I think the biggest hurdle would be the Saints are probably a little bit bitter that they getting constantly taken over a barrel by the Eagles. So they wouldn't be willing necessarily to, oh yeah, go ahead, take them. They'd want something. Now, Jody and I joke, they're not getting that first round pick back, but it might take a 7th round pick. It might take something late in the draft. And then you even have to start the conversation. But for me, Mike, it comes down to somebody like Malcolm Jenkins is only in the conversation if Chauncey is not going to come back at all. Because you need, if Malcolm's here, he's not here to be a backup. He's here to be a starter.
Yeah.
And if CJ's here and Marcus Epps stays healthy, who's played every single snap this season, the Eagles are very happy with their safeties.
Yeah, and I guess I did see a portion. I guess John Clark had Malcolm on his Takeoff podcast, and I think the way that he phrased the question to Malcolm was that Chauncey is playing out of position, that he has played mostly slot corner, I believe, in New Orleans, and that if Malcolm came in, that they could move Gardner back to his more natural spot. I don't think with Avonte Maddox returning that would be the case either. So, yeah, I think you would be in a situation if you brought Malcolm here, it would be either one of two things. One, CJ's done for the year, or two, Malcolm is well aware that he's stepping in on a very limited starting role until Gardner Johnson's back. Now, could they get creative with him if he showed that he's still in shape and he can play? John, you might know better talking to people around the league. How effective was he in his last season or two in New Orleans? Was he the same? He was Jim Schwartz used him very dynamically here, all over the field. He used him in coverage. He used him on the tight end. He used him on the slot. He used him in the box. I mean, he used him in multiple ways here. Was New Orleans using him in that way? Was he still effective? I mean, you said on my show yesterday that you saw him at practice recently, and he didn't seem to be in his playing shape, weight anyway. So is he ready to kind of get off the couch, run right on the field like Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh were? I don't know.
Yeah. He was more of a linebacker than a safety his last couple of years. And I think he was. I think you bring out the point. I think it was a great fit for what Jim Schwartz wanted to do. Jim played him at every single position on the back end of the defense. Think about that. Every single position.
And he played every snap.
Yeah. So he moved them all over. This group, they want mirrored safeties. They want single cover 2 safeties, guys who can play zone, guys who can cover. And that's why you say, and I get what John was trying to do, John Clark, because Chauncey played nickel corner with the Saints, but the Eagles don't think he's out of position. They think he's in position now, playing safety for them. And they want that coverage ability at the safety spot. And that's Marcus as well. So,
well, and that's interesting because that takes us, I asked Malcolm yesterday about, does he believe that John Gannon needs to blitz more when he watches this team? Do you watch this team and say, man, John Gannon, this defense needs to blitz more? Do you think they need to blitz more? And his immediate answer was, I don't. He explained in almost laughter as to why they do not need to blitz more and why he thinks it is so ridiculous when
for Malcolm. Way to go, Malcolm.
When people suggest that they need to blitz more. Now, he's saying it from a safety's perspective, saying, I don't want them to blitz more. Now you're leaving me on the island back there by myself. And he said, look, teams that blitz more, it's almost like a team that needs a gimmicky offense to try to move the ball. They don't have the talent, so they have to come up with something gimmicky. His point was, to him, the Eagles don't need to be a gimmick defense, meaning they don't need to blitz. They have enough pressure and talent. Now, the frustrating part is the pressure, you can't predict when it's going to get there. But in the eyes of, and he said, any coordinator worth their salt does not want to blitz.
That is correct. I say that a million. There's not a defensive coordinator in the world, perhaps with the exception of Wink Martindale, that wants to blitz. That's not true, but there are very few. Everybody wants to get home with 4. Everybody.
Right.
Everybody.
Well, and that goes to, C.J. Johnson has 6 interceptions. He has 60 tackles. He has 8 passes broken up. And that's a byproduct of he's back in coverage. They don't need him to be coming off the edges, and they don't need to. Now, I think, I had so much time with Malcolm to extrapolate, a little bit longer on that. But his point was, statistically speaking, the Eagles are really good. What he sees is a team that makes mistakes, but then the next week he's not seeing that same mistake. And he feels like you're going to make mistakes through the season, but by the time you get to the playoffs, that those things should be taken care of, and that he sees them trending in that direction.
By the way, Jody and Mike, Eagles are up to number 2, second ranked defense in the entire NFL.
As per yards per game.
Yeah. Well, that's the traditional metric.
Traditional, right. And there are new ones that they use. By the way, defensive coordinators would like to get home with 3 or 2. They'd love to have the entire team in coverage, but 4 is the standard that everybody works with.
Well, I said yesterday on my show, Jody, if the Eagles, statistically speaking, were in the same spot where they are, which is number 2 in yards against the pass, they are 3rd in sacks. They average 19 points a game, I think is 8th or 9th. If those numbers were exactly the same, but they blitzed 40% of the time, people would think this defense is great.
Yeah,
same defense.
That's
metrics.
the Philadelphia mindset, and it hasn't changed in 40 years, and it's not going to change over the next 40 years either. All right, if not Malcolm Jenkins, let's say, and I do believe this is the most likely scenario, that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is going to be put on IR, but they believe that he's going to be back for the playoffs. We got 6 weeks to go, 4 weeks for IR, 2 weeks in between, where they may or may not be playing hard, depending on how the 4 weeks go without him and what the standings say. They need another body. Marcus Blair up from the practice squad, reaching out for someone else who they're familiar with. If Malcolm's not happening for varying reasons that we've touched on for the last 15, 20 minutes, who are they going to bring in?
That's a good question, because if you look around, and I heard you guys talking about Jaquiski Tart before I jumped on, you're looking at veteran players maybe that had some sort of connection to your defense. And I heard John quickly squash Jaquiski Tart down. Who was the guy that was here a couple of years ago? He ended up with the Jets. Will
Parks.
Will Parks.
Will's out playing for the Jets.
No, I'm saying, but that type of guy who was kind of floating around. I don't know that guy's kind of floating around right now, a veteran player who's just been bouncing around from, who is your Corey Graham out there right now, right? You mentioned Anthony Harris. He's already in Denver, so you missed out on that situation. I don't know that you have a veteran logical choice out there, and you're going to have to hope that Kayvon Wallace, if he gets called on. Now, I know yesterday John Gannon went on glowingly about the third down play that Kayvon Wallace made in that game on Sunday night. So I'm imagining they're going to roll with him as the backup guy. And if something happened, Blankenship will probably be the starter, and then Wallace would be the next guy. And then there's probably somebody, Chachere or somebody who has been in camp here, that will roll in and be that extra guy here. But I don't think, guys, you're going to see them do what they did on the defensive line and go out and find a 34-year-old veteran player to come in here and be a stand-in. Quite frankly, too, I mean, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, we don't know the extent of this injury, but you've got 6 weeks, possibly a bye in the first round, which would give you another week. Zach Ertz played with this injury after 2 weeks. Now, he rushed back, but that was after 2 weeks. We're talking about 6, possibly 7 weeks. So I would think they would imagine that he is going to come back and play at some point, unless this injury is way more severe than they are leading on, or that the reports, I know Zach Ertz, I think he missed one regular season game. And then they played Seattle in the wild card, and he played in that game. So this would be one of those things where I would be pretty surprised, which is why I don't think the Eagles are going to have to panic and do what we're suggesting here.
I did talk to a couple doctors yesterday. So there are different levels. So every lacerated kidney is not the same. So there are severity levels. Zach should not have played. He did play. So I think, that's pie in the sky to think he'd be back in 2 weeks. But I do think, average-wise, if you look at the history, Andrew Luck, I brought up, Keenan Allen, I brought up guys who were shut down with lacerated kidneys versus somebody like Zach Ertz, who's came back as quickly as I've ever heard anybody come back. I think you're going to see somewhere in between. And right around that 4 week, which is why I think it's a difficult decision for the Eagles and IR, because do you carry him on the roster, hope he comes back over that span, or do you move him to IR and use the roster spot? So that's going to be the interesting part of it. We're Wednesday morning with Mike Gill. We got away from this tradition, but we're back. Player of the week, Jalen Hurts. Got to announce that. Player of the week, offensive player of the week, Jalen Hurts.
Oh, you're talking NFL. I thought you were talking about Gil's segment.
No, but every week Gil would come on.
Every week at the start of the year, the Eagles won some kind of player of the week. Oh, you faked me out on that one, John. All right, Gil, good job out of you. We thought you were the good luck charm for the longest time.
Well, I was for a while there.
They took about a 7-week hiatus there, buddy. Good to have you back. Thank you, Mike Gill.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts' game, by the way, if you are trying to find something that stand out something, because when you're looking at MVP, Mahomes' numbers are going to dwarf him in the traditional passing sense. You're going to put those two guys up next to each other, and Mahomes, the voters I would imagine, I'm not a voter, would go to the traditional passing. How many touchdowns? How many yards? The team's winning. They're the number 1 seed. Mahomes is going to have all the traditional stats to back up his candidacy. And quite frankly, if you're asking me, you take Patrick Mahomes off that team, they're average. If they are average. If they are average.
Are with Gardner Minshew?
This isn't a slight on Hurts. I think Hurts has his style of play that has helped this team get to 10-1, no question. But I think the Eagles roster, 53, is better than Kansas City's offense. Who do they have to throw to? You're throwing the ball to Juju.
Kelsey guy can play a little bit, Gil.
In
case you haven't noticed, he's pretty good, Kelsey.
Kelsey is very good. I'm not taking away from him, but I'm talking about when your tight end is your best weapon, that kind of limits the explosion of your offense sometimes, where you can get a guy who catches the ball over the middle, and he's great. But he's throwing the ball to Juju Smith-Schuster and Marcus Valdez-Scantling. I mean, come on. If Marcus Valdez-Scantling and Juju Smith-Schuster were here with Dallas Goedert, what would this offense look like? You saw it last year.
Eagle receivers, Kansas City receivers. Who's the best receiver?
A.J. Brown.
Wrong. Kelsey. It's not even close.
That's
semantics.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's a simple question, A or B, and you're picking B. I'm taking A. Kelsey's the best receiver on either of the 2 teams.
Okay.
Well, I think if you want to go
grouping,
proven Hall of Fame, yeah. I mean, Travis Kelce certainly has done it.
Forget Hall of Fame. He's got 12 touchdown passes this year. 12 receptions. 12
He's the only guy they have to throw to.
Talking about 2022, not what he did previously. 2022 this year, the best receiver, Patrick Mahomes, as the best receiver of any receivers on either 2 teams this year.
Yeah, but I think it's a different. It's not, and a lot of it has to do with scheme and coaching. I mean, Andy deserves a lot of credit for it as well. Great player. But I mean, you put A.J. Brown on Kansas City, Andy's going to. I've talked about A.J. Brown, and
he would be Terrell Owens.
And the impact he's had on this offense and the domino effect. It's not even about the catches. So it depends I hear what Jody's saying, but it depends what you're looking for. Where I agree with Mike is the Eagles have a better roster than Kansas City. I've been saying this for weeks, and Buffalo as well.
Oh, and by the way,
from 2 through
Kansas
53,
Kansas City, for some reason, Kansas City also, if you look at their schedule, we talk about who they haven't beaten anybody all year. Nobody. The only games they played that were any good.
Nobody's beaten anybody because nobody can play.
I get that, but my point is, nobody will say, well, Kansas City, I don't believe in. They haven't beaten anybody. No, we believe in Kansas City for 2 reasons. Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. We believe in Buffalo, not because of who have they beaten or who they've lost to, is because they have Josh Allen. Yeah. People have trouble believing in the Eagles. It's because they have a quarterback and a coach who are unknowns to the NFL public, coupled with an easy crutch to say, well, they haven't beaten anybody. Kansas City does not have one quality win all season long. Not one. But we believe in them.
Mike, you wouldn't call beating San Francisco a quality win?
I would, but at the time when they played San Francisco, I think we can all acknowledge that San Francisco team was kind of beat up. I like San Francisco. I think they're probably, if not the best
love
team.
San Francisco. Yeah, but San Francisco today is a lot different from
that team.
And by the way, they beat Tennessee too. Who would you have to beat for Mike Gill to call it a quality win?
Hey, I'm just echoing what I hear all the time. Tennessee, to me, I think most people, right, would say, I don't believe in that team all that much. Do we look at Tennessee?
I love Tennessee. I think they're a good team. I
like Tennessee. I feel like Tennessee is
for the Eagles this week.
Big time test. There's no question. But do we think Tennessee is a legitimate Super Bowl?
No.
We've seen this act before.
No,
do we think they're a legitimate Super Bowl?
No, I hear
team?
what you're saying. I hear it all the time with the Eagles. Not everybody, but there's a group that says the Eagles have not beaten anybody. It's a dumb argument. You can say it about every team in this league because nobody believes in everybody. I can't force people to say Tennessee's a good team or Cincinnati's a good team or some of these. They're maybe not Super Bowl contenders, but they're good, solid teams. that are really difficult to beat, people don't value that. And again, not everybody, but there's a large group of people that do not value any win in the NFL. So I know what Mike is saying. But the Eagles, 9-2 Minnesota team, Dallas, but then the excuses come in. Well, Kirk Cousins can't play at night. Well, he won at night on Thanksgiving. Dallas can't, Dallas didn't have Dak Prescott. All right. Well, they beat everybody else with Cooper Rush when they were out there, but they couldn't beat the Eagles.
And oh, by the way, Dak came back and the Packers beat Dak. So how do we, if the point is the whole strength of schedule thing is not even handedly dispersed around the NFL, that I agree with. But Mike, you said Kansas City hasn't beaten anybody. We don't like when they do that to the Eagles. We shouldn't like it when they do it to Kansas City.
Well, I think
Kansas
Jody
City has actually played. If you were just talking about those two teams, line up their schedules to this point. Draw the line underneath who's played a harder schedule, tougher schedule. The Chiefs have.
Well, I think the point is Kansas City. Yes, they've beaten San Francisco, who I like. Tennessee, who I think is a solid team. That's their 2 wins. Philadelphia has beaten Minnesota.
Too. The Cowboys and the Vikings.
And Philadelphia.
Same thing.
Right. Philadelphia has beaten Minnesota and Dallas. They both have 2 wins that we value, but most people do not if you look at those teams. Other than that, they lost to Indianapolis, right? That gets conveniently forgotten that Kansas City has lost to Indianapolis. They lost to Buffalo. When they played a very good team, they lost that game. Every other team they've beaten, I think you're not like, wow, this Kansas City team is just ripping through this schedule. They are crushing teams. No, they've gotten into some fights this year, including against a Rams team who can't get out of its own way last week. They kind of slogged their way through that one. So I don't know that Kansas City, other than their reputation, has people believing in them. And their reputation, by the way, is warranted with the guy they have who should win the MVP, which is the crux of this conversation, which was when you put Hurts and what he did this week to be player of the week, this was kind of a signature game for him, but not in the traditional sense for voters to look at.
Yeah. And he's not going to win MVP. Jody and I talked about it. He's not going to win MVP unless there's some kind of weird implosion by Patrick Mahomes over the final weeks of the season, which I don't think is coming. But
maybe they'll play a good team.
Guess what? If you finish second in the voting, man, that's pretty good. And that's I got to tell you, if you ask me, Mike Gill, who's going to be number 2 in the NFL MVP voting before the season, I would have not come up with Jalen Hurts.
Well, Jody, when we started doing this show back in August and you asked me, or maybe John brought up, hey, if you have to pay Jalen Hurts $40 million, that's the going rate for a quarterback. I remember at that time almost falling off my seat here thinking,
now it's a bargain. It's a bargain.
Right. Now you're thinking to yourself, you're pretty much going to have to pay this guy $40 million.
Oh, yeah, it's a lock. All right, listen, last thing, we're running a little late. We got off on several fun, debatable tangents, but I want to run this by both you guys because my buddy Ricky Ricardo asked it of me last night at 2 o'clock in the morning on WIP, and I had immediate response, and then I thought about it and said, it's not as outrageous as you made it sound, John. Are we in trouble because have the Eagles potentially peaked? Is there something that we're not even taking into consideration that the Eagles have become this team that is 10-1, but in actuality, they've kind of peaked. And if you look at the Eagles, there's really only one realistic way to go, and that would be down rather than up. They can't get any better than 10-1, can they? Do either of you have a fear that the Eagles have peaked?
Even if you have peaked, there's not to say in a roller coaster of a season you can't reach back up to that point. The Rams did it last year. They lost 3 straight games, week 9, 10. They were on a bye in week 11. They lost in week 12. They had played really well. They lost 3 games in a row, and then they ended up getting hot and won the Super Bowl. So I think these seasons all have peaks and valleys. I'm not sure that the Eagles have hit their highest of highs yet. the Minnesota, we were talking earlier in the year, well, they're only scoring in the first half. They're not scoring in the second half. We haven't seen a game where they have had the offensive explosion and then the defense shutout. Yeah, they had some offensive explosions in a quarter, but not throughout a whole game yet. I still think they're building towards more consistency on the offensive side of the ball. Losing Goddard, I think, has put them in a downward here. Hopefully, when he's back, that puts the roller coaster back up. I think defensively, they're still kind of, finding their way as they're adding some new pieces here and there. So, no, I don't think it's outlandish to think that they could still hit another peak. I think football seasons are filled with multiple peaks and valleys. Can you get back to that peak at the right time? I don't know that they've hit their highest of high yet, and they certainly haven't hit the lowest of low. They probably will have a game somewhere along the line here where they just don't have it. That will happen.
Yeah. I keep waiting for it. It might be this week because I like this Tennessee team. At Mike Gill's show, each and every day, drive time 97.3, ESPN South Jersey. Listen to him there. With me, I said, Jody, this team's in a lull right now. It started in Houston. They lose to Washington. Indianapolis, they grind it out. They weren't great against Green Bay, a little bit better. They're definitely in a lull, but I think Mike brings up the good point. Dallas Goedert comes back. These are not season-ending injuries. Avonte Maddox comes back. C.J. Gardner-Johnson comes back. You got a chance, if you get that first-round bye, and then you hit the playoffs, and you got all your talents, which I think 2 through 53, I think the Eagles have the best roster in the NFL when they're healthy. They got to get healthy.
Mikey Gill, thank you very much for hopping on board. You got to do some more decorating on that Christmas tree. It looks good, but you could add a little bit of style and panache.
Got to contribute, Mike. You got to contribute. That's my wife, I think, saying that. I got to.
When I went on that long journey this summer, I was in Rome, I was in Croatia, I was in Paris, I was in Dublin. I have one Christmas ball from each city to represent.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah. I think it's funny. I think Croatia, somebody will correct me on the stream, because of the World Cup, the Croatian team, I believe, is called the Eagles or something with Eagles. And the hashtag Eagles is for Croatia, and everybody uses it.
It's not Croatia, but yes.
It's Serbia. Is it Serbia or Croatia?
I think it's Serbia. And I'm no World Cup guy, so don't act like I'm the gospel
Serbia.
here.
I'm going to get in trouble.
I'm no World Cup guy, so I'm not the gospel here. But it's funny. We wonder why we can't beat Wales in soccer. When I was in Croatia, 11 kids in an alleyway with a coach running up and down the alley, a cobblestone alley with a soccer ball on their foot, getting just berated at their skills. And I said, that's why we can't beat these teams in soccer.
It's football, Mike.
Football, yeah. You gotta make sure you get that part of it right too. Yeah. Mikey Gill, thank you very much. We'll talk to you again next Wednesday. Mike Gill from the Sports Pass, 97.3 ESPN down the shore. Johnny Mac, Jody Mac, the Mac and Mac guys here on Bird 365. As we've already mentioned, Scott Grayson, Fox 29, going to join us coming up in about 20 minutes. Stay right here.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Jim Gardner is an icon.
A Philadelphia treasure.
He's a mentor, a pace setter.
Jim is my North Star.
He's trusted, revered,
Appreciated.
He is Action News.
He's compassionate. Honest.
And fair.
He is extremely dedicated,
Motivated. And always seeking the truth.
He's also funny. We are a team of many.
Jim Gardner is our leader.
And we're lucky to have him.
passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
You got your Mega Mac guys, Jody McDonald and John McMullen hanging with you here on Birds 365. Thank Mike Gill for coming on. Scott Grayson, Fox 29, going to join us in less than 20 minutes from now. Did want to note this, that yesterday, I think it was yesterday, it was announced that week 14, we got week 13 coming up this week. Week 14, NBC is
Yeah, I forgot
Sunday
to thank
night
them.
game.
Forgot to thank them, Jody.
Yes,
the National Football
I
League.
figured I'd do it for you. Because yes, those who have to work the game itself, Sunday night is a bit of a pain in the rear end. And John just did one this past week, so didn't necessarily need another one like that 2 weeks later. NBC has the capability and the flexibility to move in and out of games to best serve their audience for the big primetime game each and every single week. They've moved away from Kansas City for a very specific reason. It's called the Denver Broncos, the team they were supposed to be playing, who right now are, if not a dumpster fire, at least a major mess. And I think NBC made the right decision. There was some talk that the game that could be flexed in would be the Eagles and Giants. They instead chose the Dolphins and the Chargers, which I would say NBC made the right call. I think that's the better of the two games to flex too. And I did see some other speculation, various writers, that we could still get Giants-Eagles as a primetime game. That the final game of the season could be flexed to a night game when the Eagles come here to Philadelphia, when the Giants come here to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. No chance, no shot, not happening. By week 18, the Philadelphia Eagles will have already locked up home field advantage throughout the playoffs. And if you want to chide me for having my Eagle-colored glasses on, it really isn't. It's just my football analysis of the situation, where they're at, what the standings say, what kind of team they have. Getting a little nervous about injuries. Yeah, I got to cop to that. But I believe the Eagles will have locked up everything by the time we get there. So, no. NBC will not be flexing Giants-Eagles week 18 to see the best of the Gardner Minshew highlight reel. Not happening. Don't worry about it, Johnny Mac. That game, I believe, has it even been scheduled? They leave the last game open, right?
No, they leave the last open. They want, and that was the concern from the league's perspective with the Eagles-Giants. The Eagles only have one window open left to where they could be moved to prime time. So you're going to have to make a decision. If you wanted to move one of those Giants games to prime time, you're going to have to make the decision early. And I think they're crossing their fingers that week 18 game is meaningful. I'm with you. I don't think it's going to be meaningful
for the Giants, but much like this week, Kansas City's never
well,
a bad
they'll take
play.
it. They'll take that, by the way. They've been meaningful for anybody. Whether it's the Eagles have to win to fend off the Cowboys, whether it's the Giants have to win to get in the playoffs, they just want it to be meaningful in some fashion. And I think that will be the primetime game on the final weekend of the season. But there's nothing you can do. You're rolling the dice. It's sort of a bet. But I'm just happy that.
All right, so I'm asking you to make that bet. I know you don't have to make it, but I'm just getting your pre-read on it going into that week. It could be win you're in, lose you're out for the Giants. I kind of don't believe that either. I think the Giants will probably be locked into a playoff spot. I don't see it, Johnny Mac. There's not going to be a reason to air that game. They could have chosen the game was important to the Cowboys. Cowboys played all out last year in week number 18. If they had put that piece of crap on prime time on Sunday night, NBC's fans would have had a revolution. They would have said, "Why are we watching this garbage in the Eagles JV?" Not happening. There's no way that NBC is flexing into that game.
I hope you're right. Unfortunately, I don't. I think if there's any meaning whatsoever, they're going to flex into it.
Why?
Eagles Giants, and then New York Philadelphia.
No, it's the Giants against the Eagles JV.
Yeah, but no. Look, if there was evidence that anybody turned off the NFL at any point, I'd agree with you. But there's no evidence.
Then why would you flex Kansas City and Denver this week? Because you pick their game. It's not just we could throw any game up there and they'll tune in because it's the NFL.
They want
made a quality controlled decision.
They want meaningful games. I mean, they already took hits because, if you can get it, Indianapolis, had two, recent primetime games. Nobody wants to see Indianapolis at this point muck up the clock with a first-time head coach. But, you can't have winners every week. But, that's their highest profile window, the Sunday night game. And they want to make their broadcast people as happy as possible. And they've set up this system, and New York and Philadelphia is a big deal. Dallas is a big deal. We know the teams. Green Bay, even though they stink, gets deference usually. There are certain teams that get deference, and the Eagles are one of them, and the Giants are one of them when they're good. And the beauty of the NFC East being relevant this year, the league is thrilled with it because of the markets. I mean, they're thrilled with it. And anytime those teams are relevant, they're excited about it.
I'll give you two games right now that I think absolutely will be better games than the Eagles and the Giants. One is the Jets and the Dolphins, because the Dolphins could be battling for the number one seed in the AFC with the Bills. Shoot, maybe they're even in the fight with Kansas City for the number one seed overall. The Jets might need the game to make the playoffs. If they lose, they could be out. Both teams could have significant importance in that game. So I'll tell you, that game would be the choice over the Eagles or the Giants. Now, this is all contingent on the Eagles don't need the game. I get that. I hope you understand I'm saying that. And this is a prediction I'm making. Week number 18, the Eagles are going to go to their backups. They've already shown they do it. They did it last year. They'll do it this year because actually more is at stake, because that bye week is key rather than, oh, we're just playing for positioning. We know we're in as a wild card. Last year, when it didn't really make that big a deal, they pulled everybody. This year, where you're actually gaining that much more, I'm telling you, the Eagles still aren't going to even play their they'll sit in. Amazing number of their starters, practice squad guys all over the place. And I had one other game. Oh, Cowboys and Commanders. Because I think both of those teams will be in the fight for the playoff spots, wild card and the like. What's the cap on the Sunday night game? Is there a cap, John, that a team can only be on so many times?
There's a cap on the prime time number. And the Eagles are at the cap. They got one more. So how many prime time have the Eagles? I have to look it up.
And how many have the Cowboys had? That's the only thing I'm thinking that the Cowboys could have capped out by then. But
so there is a cap. There is a cap on the primetime number. I don't know where the Cowboys are with it, but yeah, they always. I mean, the Cowboys are number one. Eagles fans don't want to hear that either, but
They're the
Cowboys are
biggest
always
draw.
number one.
Did you see the ratings on Thanksgiving?
Yeah, absurd.
The greatest individual non-Sunday in the history of the league as far as rating goes for the 3 games. There you go with a very watchable early game, which it isn't always with Detroit, with Buffalo being in it, the Cowboys and the Giants, and then the Sunday night game, a pretty damn good Minnesota team in a game that went right down to the wire. Best one-day ratings in the history of the NFL for a non-Sunday.
And, who was number one amongst the Sunday? The Cowboys.
Giants, Cowboys.
That
has to do with the time. It's 4 o'clock game. The 4 o'clock window is
typically the night window is better, but maybe it changes on Thanksgiving.
No, the night you're comparing apples and oranges. Usually the night window is better because it's the only game. When you have a 4 o'clock window Eastern time that isn't competing with any other game, no, then the 4 o'clock window is going to be the biggest because every Sunday you've got other games at 4 o'clock. So one individual game is going to be able to compare to.
But just in general, television prime time is that's why Sunday night is, prime time television. That generates the most money, and everything, not just the NFL. Regular TV shows, prime time is prime time. But the Cowboys, look, Cowboys are the marquee team in this league. Eagles fans are never going to like to hear that, but it's just a reality. They are the marquee team in this league.
And Thursday, Thanksgiving Thursday is a little bit different animal because it's a holiday, not just any Thanksgiving. I did want to mention this before we get Scotty up. And I ran this out to my listeners on WIP last night, and I got one, didn't get the other one. I don't know if you've seen the results. The first Pro Bowl voting of the fans was released, John, and 2 Philadelphia Eagles are starting at their position as of the first fan vote, and the fans get 1/3, the coaches get a vote, and the players get a vote, each 1/3, and that's how they decide the Pro Bowl starters. And this is not the final fan votes, just the first results released. Did you see the results?
I did see them. I didn't really pay that much attention to them.
Okay, so the 2 Eagles who right now are leading at their position would be
Jason Kelsey, I know, was one of them.
That would be correct.
I forget the other one.
I'll tell you who the other one is because it surprised me a little bit. When I saw that 2 Eagles lead, I tried to guess right off the top of my head who it was going to be. Kelsey was my first guess. My second guess was Lane Johnson. Not correct. My next would have been Big Play Slay. Not correct. Javon Hargrave at defensive
Javon
is actually leading the DTs. He's either first or second because they got 2 starters. But he would be a starter right now if the voting were to be capped and the players and the coaches didn't vote. He's having a heck of a year, Johnny Mac, which is kind of good news, bad news. Good news is he's helping the Eagles get to 10-1. Bad news is it's going to cost the Eagles if they want to keep him.
Yeah, that's a difficult decision. I mean, and it always has been because, Javon's a very good pass rusher. Very good pass rusher. One of the best not named Aaron Donald interior pass rushers in the NFL. Not great at stopping the run. So, there's a little bit of a give and take there. How much do you want? And pass rushers get paid, Jody. Let's be honest.
Even at the DT position, more so on the outside, but DTs who can get to the quarterback get paid too. Ask Ndamukong Suh.
Yeah. They had a lot of difficult decisions to make. And we talked about almost their entire defense is on a contract year, and a lot of them are performing and playing well. They have a lot of difficult decisions to make. And Javon's one of them because he's also post 30 as well. So that comes into it as well. The age comes into it. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be Howie Roseman after this season to make some of these difficult decisions. But Javon is having a big year at the right time, just like Miles Sanders. A lot of guys, big year at the right time.
Opinion out of you. Say the contracts are similar. Hargrave getting a better deal, maybe an extra year, maybe a couple extra bucks because he's having a better statistical year. But it comes down to either Hargrave or Fletcher Cox. Which one's how we bring him back?
Well, he should bring Javon back. But Fletcher
he's always taking care of Fletcher. Fletcher's one of his guys.
Favorites. Yeah, Fletcher is one of Howie's favorites. Just saw, he had one of his best games of the year, actually. Fletcher.
Yeah.
And he got a game ball, as Jonathan Gannon mentioned yesterday. But Javon's played better, and he's younger. He's still at the height of his career. Fletcher's clearly was a better player than Javon has ever been or likely will ever be, but he's clearly descending and has descended from that point. Javon's still at the apex of his career, and he's a better player, and he's younger. To me, it's pretty simple, but the things that make it difficult is, when you have all-time franchise greats, and that's what Fletcher Cox is, if Eagles fans know, that is an all-time franchise great. One of the best defensive players in this franchise's history. When you have those players, it makes it more difficult to move on from them.
But Howie took care of him once this past year with $14 million after they cut him and let him go free agent before you could blink. He was re-signed to a $14 million deal. So the Eagles have shown a propensity to take care of Fletcher Cox. That's why I think it's an intriguing question. One we don't have to worry about right now. We will as soon as the season ends. Hopefully it's after a parade for you Eagle fans. But it is a fun debate to have, even leading up to the postseason. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. Put it together. It's Mac and Mac here on Birds 365. One of our fun guys that we have on from time to time, Scott Grayson from Fox 29. Sports anchor and host of Props and Locks, is scheduled to join us next year on Birds 365, so stick around.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Jim Gardner is an icon.
A Philadelphia treasure.
He's a mentor, a pace setter.
Jim is my North Star.
He's trusted, revered.
Appreciated.
He is Action News.
He's compassionate. Honest.
And fair.
He is extremely dedicated,
motivated, and always seeking the truth.
He's also funny. We are a team of many.
Jim Gardner is our leader.
And we're lucky to have him.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. We've still got you for another 40. We're going to spend a chunk of that with our next guest. There he is, popped up, ready to rock and roll from Fox 29, sports anchor and host of Props and Locks on Fox 29 as well, Mr. Scott Grayson. SG, how was your Thanksgiving?
It was very good. We actually had an extended family cruise in Bermuda, which was
nice.
Which was good. But then, anytime you go out with the extended family, right?
Enough said.
Yeah.
But did you like Bermuda? Because I've gotten mixed reviews. My wife and I went on 2 cruises there, and I had a phenomenal time both times. But I've met people who go, yeah, you got to get a boat, and they don't like Bermuda. I loved it both times I went. Did you?
You know what I love the most? Just the slow style of pace there. It was just nice to get away from the hustle and bustle of everything here, and we enjoyed that. I mean, the weather was windy, still a little warmer, but windy, rainy one day. But overall, I mean, I liked it. I had no complaints at all.
Did you rent the moped?
Did not, although I did get, if we go back, that's something I'd love to do because I just saw people on those going all over the place, and it looked like a nice way to see the island.
Except, guess what? Go into the pocket, get one for yourself, get one for your wife.
You're right.
Because we rode together when we went, and it's not good. The wife just sits behind you. Watch out! Hit the no.
Of course, they drive on the other side of the road.
Yeah. I'll get my own moped. I'll follow you wherever you want to go, dear. Don't try and do the tandem thing.
Yeah,
it's only going to lead to fight.
The tandem moped. Yeah, we'll stay that. Here's my question, Scott. Did you get any fire Jonathan Gannons in Bermuda?
Yeah. I did not. It was interesting. The ship left out of New York, so there were a lot of Philadelphia people, and they actually put the Eagles-Colts game on in one of the bars.
Nice.
And that's where a lot of Eagles fans were watching, with an occasional annoying Cowboys or Commanders fan who was just clapping relentlessly in the first half. I did not hear him at the end of the game. But, I did not hear any fire Jonathan Gannons. A lot of people on edge in that Colts game all the way up to the end, which I think everybody back here watching was feeling the same way. But it was an interesting experience watching it on the ship with a bunch of other people, on vacation.
Yeah. But by the way, Cowboys or Commander, I'm going to guess Cowboys. There are no Commanders fans left.
There was one, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
But he was not wearing a Commander's shirt. He had on a Redskins shirt. So you have to ask yourself, well, obviously he's been a fan for a while, but he hasn't gotten the new gear.
And he'll be a fan when Daniel Snyder's gone. They will have their fans magically back. But until that happens,
right.
They have some issues.
But by the way, they're in the playoffs as of right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I did not see happening. All 4 teams from the NFC, which used to be least, has become the beast, would be in if the playoffs started right now. So that's
never happened before.
Another log on the fire of, who have the Eagles beat? Basically everybody in the division. It's the best division in football. You fools who question the Eagles' strength of schedule. Annoys the snot out of me. All right, Scott Grayson, they are 10-1. And we sit here on Birds 365 every day and have to come up with 2 hours of Eagle conversation. So from time to time, we point out the questions, the slights, the problems, the issues, which you have to do if you're going to do 2 hours every single day. But you got to come back to their 10-1, and no one else in the National Football League is 10-1. Are we trying to look for the fissures in the ice a little too much, or should we just kick back and enjoy the fact that the best team in the National Football League plays here in Philadelphia?
You know what? Honestly, I think that's what makes this city so much fun to be a fan in, is because you know that you've been through this before to a certain extent. You've been let down how many times that you have to guard yourself. You have to look through all the magnifying glass, and you want to look and try to find the weaknesses on this team, just because as a fan, you know, all the people around here are so educated, so well versed in football, especially, that you have to guard yourself and say, okay, well, you know, and fans here legitimately, like you said, ask the question, well, who have they beaten? And then you stop and look down the schedule. And like you did, Jody, I think you say they've beaten some good football teams, plenty of teams that are going to be in the playoffs, it looks like. And so you say, well, this team's tested. And that's why I'm looking forward to this game this weekend, because this to me is a big one. It's a big one that's going to help you figure out where you really are at this point. Especially on defense, in my mind. And but I don't think you're wrong to look through it and say, where is this team's weaknesses? What do they need to improve on? Howie Roseman's doing it every day, and he's going out and finding guys who've been on the sidelines or been retired, and he's signing them, and he's trying to help his team. And of course, we've all heard the rumblings about potentially Malcolm Jenkins being another one to come back. And I think it's the right way to look at this. You've got to be a smart football fan, but you've also got to step back and be able to admit as well that, you know, and I know you guys have done it on this show, this is a really good football team. It's very well-rounded as any team in the National Football League right now. And they can win, and this is the key for me, they can win different games that feature different styles in different ways.
Yeah.
And that's the mark of a really good football team.
Yeah. Well, you bring up this week, and I agree with you. Tennessee is a good football team. It's going to be a difficult game. It's going to be a big test for this Eagles team. And the obvious angst is over Derrick Henry, who is, you know, the most powerful back, arguably the best back in the NFL. All that is right. But guess who the best running team is between Philadelphia and Tennessee? It's not Tennessee. Now, I'm not going to go over 363 this week, Scott.
Yeah.
But if I were to tell you the Eagles rushed more as a team than Tennessee, would that shock you?
A little bit, because I think at times you forget what Jalen Hurts racks up week to week. You know, you get stuck on the running backs. And so I would be a little surprised by that, just by the guy, as you mentioned, who's running for Tennessee. He gets a lot of attention. And to me, that is what I'm watching most this weekend. What does Jonathan Gannon do? Does he sit back and do the same thing he's done, which is try to let his defensive line stop the run and not really let the linebackers come up and help as much as I would? Or does he actually do something different? And if he does, what and how? And I'm not. I see you guys shaking your head. I'm not expecting.
Not happening. I'm with you, Scotty, but John has won me over on this. I keep bringing it up, and he keeps going, Jody, just stop. It's not happening. Gannon's defense is Gannon's defense.
Well, here's where the difference can come. The difference can come. You use more 5-man fronts. You use more odd-man fronts. That's the difference. He might use more odd-man fronts, and that would be the adjustment. But yeah, if you think he's playing extra linebackers or putting extra people in the box, it's not what they do. They want to play light boxes, and they want to limit. And by the way, guys, think of it this way. This is what they want to do when they had the best secondary in football with Avonte Maddox and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. That's how they want to play. Now they have Josiah Scott and Reed Blankenship out there. You think they want to account another body up front and not help those guys?
No,
it ain't happening.
It's not. And that's why I look at it. And if I'm Jonathan Gannon, and if we're agreeing that he's not going to change his defense, to me, you've just got to find a way to say, listen, I don't need to stop Derrick Henry. Like, I can let him have his 100 yards, maybe even 120, but I can't let him have 200, right? And I think if the Eagles can do that, given what this offense is and what they can do, because like you pointed out, John, I mean, you know, Tennessee's looking at this game and the Eagles offense like we're looking at Derrick Henry and the fear of the running game for Tennessee. They've got to find a way to stop that. And to me, this is a game where if the Eagles can score into the mid to upper 20s, even 30 points, it's going to be enough to win this game, even if Derrick Henry gets his 100, 120, couple touchdowns. I just don't see Ryan Tannehill beating him. And that's what I think it's going to come down to. And if you're Jonathan Gannon and you say, I want Ryan Tannehill to beat me, well, at some point you kind of got to stop the run enough to put him into third and medium, third and long. And I just don't know if they're going to be able to do that.
Scott, even though I run the risk of, once again, either here on our stream, not as much social media, more so being labeled as an Eagle hater when I point out issues that the Eagles have. And yeah, I'll tell you why it gets on my case. When Jalen Hurts does it, oh, he's so focused. He's such a leader. We left stuff on the table. We could have been better. When Jalen Hurts said they could have been better, that's a great thing coming from the quarterback. Jody McDonald says it. You're a hater. Why are you going picking on the Eagles? All right, anyway, special teams. I don't know anybody who can find a silver lining to special teams other than the big field goal that Jake Elliott made the other night to kind of put the game away. Their special teams are a mess. They need to get better. They need to do better. They need to try something to change it. What do you think that's going to be, Scotty?
Boy, that is a great question, right? I mean, the ultimate sign of disrespect is when somebody takes the ball 8 yards deep in the end zone and is not afraid to get it out there and think they're going to get past the 25 and do what they did. I mean, that's absolute disrespect. And again, like the Commanders did with how they attacked the Eagles, against, playing the run and really beating them. They put a blueprint out there. And now Green Bay, I think, did a little bit of the same thing to say, don't take a knee in the end zone. Go take these guys on because they're not sound. You heard it in Nick Sirianni's news conference yesterday. He talked about, I know he was asked by somebody, and I forget who, about, potentially running a few starters out there on special teams to help. That's fine, but the scheme, I think, has to be better. They're just not covering all their lanes. They're not staying in, you got to stay home. If you stay home and everybody stays home, there shouldn't be gaps that create those big returns. And until they do that, Jody, I don't really know what kind of fix there is. These guys just have to be better coached. And that's right now a problem. I think the criticism has really raised its decibel level to the point where obviously Sirianni had to spend time in his press conference yesterday talking about it. And I think that's going to resonate. And I'm curious, that's one of the things also this weekend I think you want to look at. Have they done anything different there? We could say Jonathan Gannon is going to bang his head against the wall and keep the same defense. Well, what's Michael Clay? What's Nick Sirianni going to do on special teams? That's another thing to watch this weekend.
Yeah, Scott, if you go back to the Chip Kelly, Dave Bipp era, when Dave first got here, they spent a roster spot or two on good special teams player. They always made that an investment to put on the roster. If I have to look at Howie Roseman, Howie is a significant favorite to be the executive of the year. But I would say the one issue with this roster is they haven't paid enough deference to good special teams players. And it's not sexy. Nobody's sitting there going, oh, I want Matthew Slater. I want Chris Maragos. They don't think about that until you need it and you don't have it. Do you think that's a bigger issue than maybe the average fan makes it out to be?
My answer to that, John, would be, let me start with this. You mentioned Howie. I think Howie has looked at this team and felt it's good enough on both sides of the ball that special teams can be ignored to an extent. That's the impression I've gotten by watching this. But what's happened and what happened last week was Green Bay was cutting the field in half because of special teams. Now you're asking your defense to have to defend 50 yards instead of 75, 80. It is a big difference. And I think now, which is a little late, but they're realizing this is something we have to pay attention to. And right now, the only difference, to go back and answer Jody's question, you need Jake Elliott to put it out of the end zone. Can't return it if he can't be in bounds when he catches it. But, in the wind, in some of these situations you're going to face this late in the year, that might be extremely difficult to do. And so, I think you go back to the point that, I don't know that there's an easy fix to this, really, at this point in the season. They have ignored it. I think it's coming back to bite to bite them a little bit. And they've got to find a way now to limit the damage, and say, forget even the 25. You got to hold the opponent to the 30. Make them have to go 70 yards. Give your defense more of a chance. And that's the one defense in Jonathan Gannon's favor is You know, his defense had to face a lot of short fields last week, and that's part of the reason Green Bay was able to put up 33 points. So, you know, I at this point, I think you're going to have to ask some starters to go out there and make some tackles. But now you run the risk of more injuries, and nobody wants that.
Scotty, I want to ask you about this week's opponent, Tennessee, because I've watched both of their games the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, they were on Thursday night, so it's a national game, so you watch every snap. And then this past week, I watched them because I thought they were, your prop and locks guys would have appreciated this. The can't lose game of the week. Oops. I thought they had Cincinnati revenge at home. Everything. Ryan Tannehill threw the ball well the week before. I thought everything pointed to a Tennessee win, and they were getting points. Wrong. So, yeah, you won't be having me on props and locks anytime soon. But Tannehill is an interesting case. He did the week before against Green Bay. Green Bay loaded up the box, and he threw it for 330 yards. Ryan Tannehill, I didn't think could see 330 yards, let alone throw 330 yards, but he did. This past week, Cincinnati loaded up the box, and Ryan Tannehill did diddly squat against that Bengals secondary. I see him as like the AFC's version of Kirk Cousins. He is your basic good quarterback. He's not bad. He's not great. He's good. Ryan Tannehill, Kirk Cousins, Kirk throws it more than he does. But if you looked at the list all the quarterbacks in the NFL, one would be 16, the other would be 17. They're dead in the middle. Do you have any fear of Ryan Tannehill beating up on the Eagles this week?
Now, I said it before. I want him to be the one to have to beat me. You know, if I'm the one designing the defense this week, I want him to have to beat me. But as you pointed out, and I think it's a very, very good analogy, you know, Kirk Cousins is able to go out there and win a game every now and then. Ryan Tannehill, he can win a game, but not consistently. And I'd rather take my chances there than and I think another analogy brought up from last week was Cincinnati and their secondary. Look, the Eagles secondaries. Look, you got the injury to Gardner Johnson, but you still got Slay on one side and Bradbury on the other. So I would rather take my chances with those two guys against Ryan Tannehill in the passing game than any other situation out there. And so I think it's a great comparison to Kirk Cousins. I think that, you know, like Kirk, Tannehill will also give you the ball if you can get that pressure on him. But all of that to me starts with having to not stop the run, but occasionally win it down, you know, and put them in a situation where it's not 3rd and 3 or less.
Right.
Because I would put my odds, you talk about odds and props a lot. I'd put my odds on Derrick Henry winning that 3-yard battle on 3rd and 3 more often than not. And so I'm looking at this and saying, Ryan Tannehill, go ahead and put up your 330 yards. I dare you. And my guys out there, Slay and Bradbury, are probably going to win enough battles that we're going to take it away a couple of times and help our offense. And this offense, look, this team, in my opinion, is built. And Gannon plays the defense this way to play with the lead. And when they have the lead and they can start adding to that lead and making it double digits, now they start making you one-dimensional. That's when you can start really, really dialing in. But that's the hard thing. Can you get that kind of lead?
Don't say that too loud, because that would mean the Eagles would actually have to pass on deferring if they win the opening coin toss and say, give us the ball. Scott Grayson's right. We're better off playing with the lead, which they did last week. Not because they won the toss, because Green Bay did. And they gave it to them. They marched it right down the field and won. Don't say that too loud, because Sirianni may hear you, and you may actually have to think about it.
You know, it's interesting. If I were to do my own prop and lock, I would do – what are the Eagles more likely to do? Load the box or not defer when winning the opening coin toss? That is a very difficult one. That is a very difficult one.
99% on both sides.
Yeah, 99% on both sides. You know, in a weird way, is this a week long term? You know, the Eagles need C.J. Gardner-Johnson back. They need Avonte Maddox back. In a weird way, does it kind of help them against Tennessee? Because if you're Tennessee and you say, oh, man, they don't have Gardner-Johnson, they don't have Avonte, we could take advantage of Scott, we can take advantage of Reed Blankenship. Let's throw the football instead of doing what they should be doing, and that's pound the rock with Derrick Henry. Can you see that working against Tennessee in this very short window?
It's a great thought, right? Because what do football coaches like to do? They like to think they can outthink everybody else, right? And so you look at it, and if you're the Titans, you go, look, they know we're going to try to run the ball. So, and I was shocked the Packers came out and 2 out of their first 3 plays were pass plays. So are the Titans going to do the same thing? Are they going to go, look, I know you think we're going to run the ball, so we're going to run play action the first 2 plays, and we're going to go take a shot. Yeah, it's right. You know what? If you're the Eagles, you're saying, go ahead. I dare you. And Blankenship is an interesting case in the sense that, you know, everybody talks about the interception he had. They also want to rip him for that play, the touchdown he gave up. Well, listen, that's very fixable. He took a bad angle. You play that video back, you look at it in film, and you tell him, listen, I'd rather you err on the side of caution and angle too far and come back and make the play as opposed to, you know, to cut 2 underneath. You can fix that. I think it's an interesting thought that you bring up, John, and it is going to be curious to watch in that first quarter is what do the Titans try to set the tone with? And do they think that you're going to sell out to stop Derrick Henry? And if they do, they obviously haven't seen enough Jonathan Gannon because the 3 of us thought that's not going to happen. So you're playing right into the Eagles' hands. It's an interesting thought. But to me, you know, when you talk about big picture in this game in particular, to me, you're sitting at 10-1. You have a luxury here of playing this game, which to me is going to be a great measuring stick game as you head down the home stretch to expose some things or to possibly show that you're better at things than maybe you thought or could have been. And as you pointed out, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, you're going to get Dallas Goedert back on offense. You're going to get some of these other guys back. Jordan Davis coming back soon. So you're playing this game with a couple of cards less in the deck to know that you're going to be able to fix things with these guys down the stretch. Health is key. And I look at this and say they're 10-1 right now. How many wins do they need to be the 1 seed? Is it 13? Is it 14? They've got the tiebreakers. I mean, you may only need 3 more wins. So you can afford to lose this game, but nobody wants that. And I look at this and say, go figure out and try some things. Like I'd be fine with them trying some things differently against this team and saying, let's see what might work. Because you're looking big picture here. This at this point is just, you know, you win this Sunday. Now you're 11. You may only need 2 more wins. It's a fun little thing to look at in a situation that we haven't seen many Eagles teams in. And it's kind of a fun way to look at the last, 6 games here, 5 games.
I got a great one as suggested by one of our streamers here on our stream for Mr. Props and Locks. And I know you usually set up your other guys. I'm putting you to the test here. I'm playing Scott Grayson. That's big shoes to fill, but I'm going to give it a try here. Under over squib kicks by the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday. I'm setting the number at 1.5. Are you going under or over? Sirianni was speculating. We're going to get better on special teams. How? He didn't really get into details. Could the squib kick be part of it? Less to cover, less field to get that. Do you think they're working on that in practice? If they are, they sure as heck won't do it the 15 minutes Johnny Mack is allowed in there to actually see him practice. Under over 1.5 squib kicks on Sunday. Scott Grayson, what say you?
You know, I'm going to go over to go along with the line of thought that I just provided, which is you try something different.
That's exactly why I asked it when I asked it.
And here's the thing.
Thanks to Tim Aline who sent that into us.
It's a great question. It's a great, fun question. And I think they're going to do, 1.5 is a tough number because I think they'll try it once. And the question is, does it work? If it does, obviously they're going to do it more.
They'll do it a second time.
You know, the other way you can do it is you can sky a kick. You know, you can let it come down at the 20 with more air under it to go cover. And that's another way maybe you can help your coverage team. But you know, I think a squib kick's a great way to do it because that ball can bounce some funky ways. And all the while, as I think the kickoff return team, you can sometimes get out of your blocking lanes because you're trying to figure out where that ball's going. It's an interesting thought. I would take the over on that.
Okay. Well, we'll
you know, it's interesting. The Eagles are probably the only team you have to pay attention to kick returners. I mean, there aren't there aren't a lot of great kick returners left in the NFL or punt returners. There aren't a lot of big returns any longer. Haskins from Tennessee is top 10, but he's averaging 21.8 yards a kickoff return. His longest of the year is 37. Boy, we shouldn't have to worry about this, but we do.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to make a big deal out of it because they are 10-1. But boy, I mean, 50-yard kickoff returns don't happen in the NFL. And the Eagles give up 2 of them in one game. It's amazing that a team this good at everything else can't figure this out. And we're talking about squib kicks in the modern NFL. It's amazing.
You talk about those returns. I mean, sorry. You look at it and say, Jesus. I mean, he could kick it out of bounds and they get the ball at the 40 and it'd be a better situation than midfield.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
it's, on one hand, it's a great problem to have, right? If you're sitting here going, boy, the worst part of
that is true.
Team is special teams.
That is true.
But on the other hand, it's also
frustrating though.
It is, because if you could just get not great at it, if you could just get average at it, your football team would be so much better. And it's you've got 6 weeks to fix it before you get into the playoffs. They've got time to figure it out in some sort of way. And that's why, you don't be insane. Don't do insanity here. Don't just keep doing the same thing over and over.
Michael Klein said that. I asked him, he said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. He went to that default setting. But boy, I mean, how about a mortar kick? Forget about a squib kick. How about a kick it high and let Zach McPherson, whoever you have, Andre Sacheret, maybe that helps? I don't know. I don't know. But one thing you can't do is kick it deep in bad weather. Because
what do you think about, we love throwing crazy stuff against the wall, right? What about, Andy Reid used to do this kind of stuff. What about the untimely onside kick? Surprise them.
They
recover it.
That yet. Did Sirianni do that last year? I don't think so.
I don't think it's not in his. It doesn't seem like it's in his DNA, but he hasn't really had a special teams this bad that he's had to deal with.
Another thing to keep an eye on Sunday. All right, last one for me, Scott, and I'll see if I can drag you down with me. If A.J. Brown coughs up the football for the 3rd consecutive week.
Oh, not against Tennessee. Oh.
Johnny Mack gave him a pass 2 weeks ago. It was a great punch out by the defender. I said it was a bad move by A.J. Brown. This week, he had the broken blood vessel in his eye because he was so sick he couldn't even see, and that's why he gave up the football. You're a wide receiver. You can't put the football on the ground 3 times in a row, 3 weeks in a row. What will be the explanation if it goes down again this week?
The problem to me this past week was he's such a big guy, and he's had so much success with yards after the catch, right? He was trying to get more yards when that play was he had 3 guys on him. Like, you just got to go down. He's got to be a little smarter. Now, in terms of what the explanation is, if he puts it on the ground, I can't imagine there's going to be a good one. So to me, there is no explanation. It can't happen. And I look at him, and he's the one guy I circle because this game has been circled on his calendar for months. Mm-hmm. And and if I'm Jalen Hurts, I'm going to feed him frequently. I'm going to give him every opportunity to shove it down Tennessee's throats. But he's got to be smart and understand at times when plays are done. I think that's the one thing you look at him. Sometimes you forget he's still a relatively young player. Now, he's a number 1 receiver. He should know better. There's no doubt. But you've got to know, look at Jalen Hurts, right? We all compliment. And lately, I think he's starting to get away from it a little bit. But he's not afraid to slide and go down and end a play with, 12 yards is great. Maybe I could make a move and get 25. I could also get plastered and be out for the rest of the year. 12 yards is fine. Get down, take the plus. With A.J. Brown lately, he's getting himself in trouble trying to do too much. Just take the win, take the great play, take the gain. This offense is good enough. Go down at the 10. We'll get it in on the next couple plays. I think that's where he needs to improve right now.
Agreed on all fronts. Scotty, thank you much for coming on with us, be agreeing with me and sharing in the, hey, you can't have a fumble this week, EJ. Johnny Mac's not going to be able to come to your rescue on this one if you go 3 straight weeks of coughing it up. Oh, the excitement of playing Tennessee again. I guess that's
well, and real quick, just to finish that thought, what did this team do great through the first half of the season? They didn't turn it over.
Yeah.
Lately,
well, they put up
been
these signs in the auditorium, Scott.
Yeah.
That's where it all turned.
Yeah.
They got too cocky, and they put up these ball security signs, and boom, they start giving the football away.
Giving it up.
And how, you got to tip the cap, right? Miles Sanders, no fumbles.
Yeah. Oh, you just screwed. You just screwed. Miles.
Oh, you put the jinx on Miles. He's going to put it on the carpet. AJ will hang on,
Scott.
Miles will give it up.
Just as I was saying it, I'm like, here we go. And all your listeners are going to be emailing and twittering me, tweeting me all kinds of hate mail.
Join the parade. Scotty, great stuff. Appreciate you coming on board. Always good when we get you on. We'll do so again down the road.
Thanks, all right, you got it. Thanks, guys.
Scott Grayson, Fox 29. Sports anchor and host of Props and Locks, even though my lock went up in flames last week with Tennessee. I'm going to try not to do that again this week. All right, J-Mac, Maga Mac coming back. We got to put a bow on the show here on Birds 365.
Don't wait until after Thanksgiving for leftovers. It's the new leftover sales event at Jeff D'Ambrosio Destination Downingtown. Jeff must get rid of hundreds of new 2022 vehicles on the lot. Rams, Grand Cherokees, Wranglers. Jeff has them all for less. Jeff has reduced prices and payments to the lowest they've been all year. And Jeff knocks down high interest rates. Save thousands more than anywhere else. Plus, get more for any trade or lease return. You always win at Jeff's. Great selection, best price. Hurry in now. Jeff D'Ambrosio Destination Downingtown. Nobody treats you better. Black Friday sales event.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Go for the beers, go for the cheers, go for the hit and the hits, go for the scene, go for the screens, go for the gallery, go for the win, go to Ocean.
At Salus University, our graduates are among the most highly trained in their profession because of our unique emphasis on research, interprofessional collaboration, and early clinical exposure. Learn more about our programs at salus.edu.
Note of that return, after we finish up, you got your football playbook, Rick Saratella coming up next, and then your sports take trifecta with Robbie E and D-Gun and Barrett into the National Football Show this afternoon. There's no reason you ever have to turn off the JAKIB YouTube channel. Just keep it right here, and while you're at it, go ahead, like McMullen and McDonald. Hit that button before you go. If you got to go, if you check out at 10, shame on you. You're going to miss out on Saratella. but do hit that like button before you go. All right, Johnny Mac, walkthrough Wednesday today, full practice today.
Walkthrough. We are in the walkthrough portion of the season. It seems like we hit that demarcation line last week, and they're back to the walkthrough again. The big practice now on Thursday instead of Wednesday. I don't think it's going to change, but we'll see.
I know you tweeted out. I saw it last night. Shoot, I think already on the air on WIP, or was preparing to do so, that the Eagles brought a player in for a workout yesterday. They cleared 2 practice squad places, cutting guys yesterday. Do you think they did so because they're actually going to address the special teams issues, need depth because of injuries? Yeah. Why do you think they did some? Now, it's on the periphery, but there is roster juggling that you can do, and you do so for a reason. What do you think is the Eagles thinking? Will you get an announcement of a signing today?
I think we will for practice squad signing. They released Kennedy Brooks and Roderick Johnson yesterday off the practice squad. So that's an indication to me that they might have a safety they're looking at to bring on the practice squad. Kaywan Baker is the player they worked out yesterday. It's a wide receiver, kick returner, maybe kick return. If not for this year, next year. It was the 7th round pick of the Saints in 2021. So it's that back end churn of the practice squad, which happens all the time, but it's a little bit more important this week because they might want to bring in another body at safety. But again, people forget Marquise Blair was just brought in as well. He plays safety. So I don't know where he is. I do know he was a high level player coming out of college, 2nd round pick, as I said. But he had some significant injury issues. So who knows where he is. But he's only 25 years old. This is the time of year where I think Linval Josephson and Ndamukong Suh kind of spoil people. Like you can go out and get Linval Josephson.
Just go pick it off the tree, low-hanging fruit. Yeah. They're all available.
Yeah. It's not like that at every position. It's not like that at safety. Yeah. So
it is not. They got their work cut out for decision-making process, but that's why if Howie Roseman is going to be the executive of the year, and I surely think he's in the conversation for that award, you still got a little bit of work to do, Howie. Let's see you continue to dazzle people. All right, partner, good show today. Hopefully get some rest at some point. Don't know when, but have some chicken soup or something so you actually feel better tomorrow.
I don't know if that's going to happen, but I'll be here. That's all that matters.
He'll be here. I'll be here. You'll get Mac and Mac right back here on Birds 365 in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.